All right, this is Module 1, Lesson 10. We're going to talk about the equations of graphs of proportional relationships involving fractions. So let's talk about a couple things that are all review. It says the definition of a unit rate, okay, is going to be when you compare two quantities with different units. So what does the point 0, 0 mean? This is what we learned in lesson 9. That means 0 of the first quantity will result in 0 of the second quantity. And the quantities are usually labeled on the graph or in the table. What does the point 1r mean? Remember we did 1k yesterday. This is the amount of increase on the vertical units for every one increase in the horizontal units. Remember, K is your unit rate, so at one of the X values, your unit rate would be your Y value. All right, let's take a look at example 1. Move this up. Example 1 says Sam's mother has entered a 10K race. Sam and his family want to show their support of their mother, but they need to figure out where they should go along the race course. They also need to determine how long it will take her to run the race so that they will know when to meet her at the finish line. Previously, her mother ran a 5K race with a time of 1.5 hours. Assume Sam's mother ran the same rate as the previous race in order to complete the chart. So we just found out that it took 1.5 hours to race 5 kilometers. There's a reason why I skipped that first column. And that's because I want to figure out how much it would take for 1 hour. I can do that by finding the unit rate. So down below, I'm going to find the unit rate, K equals Y over X. Now remember my Y value is in the second column. My X value is in the first column. So this would be 5 divided by 1.5, and I'm just going to bring my calculator in here. 5 divided by 1.5 is 3.3 repeating. I don't want to leave it like that. I'm going to change it to a fraction, so it's a little bit easier to work with. That would be 3 1/3. So this is at 1 hour, she has raced 3 1/3 kilometers. Now we can just use that to keep our chart going. I'm going to count by half hours. And now all I need to do, since my equation is y equals kx, k is 3 1/3, all I have to do is multiply the hours by 3 1/3. So here's 3 1/3. I'm going to multiply that by 2. Gives me 6 2/3. I'm going to do 3 1/3 times 2.5. Remember, that's 8 1/3. 3 1/3 times 3 is 10. And 3 1/3 times 3.5, if you want to know what that is, 11 2/3. So here's our table. Let's take these and graph these points on the graph. So at 1 hour, we were at 3 1/3. 1.5, she was at 5. At 2, it was just above 6. 2.5, it was just above 8. 3, she was at 10. And 3.5 was just over 11. Okay, so we're going to take our straight edge. And don't forget to draw your arrow. All right, so let's answer some questions about this. It says, what are some specific things that you notice about this graph? So if I'm looking at the graph, what do we notice? We notice it's a straight line. It goes through the origin. What is the connection between the table and the graph? Well, if you look, your table has time and distance. Time is your x values down at the bottom. Distance is your y values going up and above. So the connection is that time is your x values, and then distance are the y values. And that's the same for the table and the graph. What does the ordered pair 2 and then 6 2/3 represent? Let's use the graph. 2 represents the number of hours you walk to 2, and 6 2/3 represent the distance. It'd be nice if you could see what I just pointed to. Let's try that again. 2 is the hours, and it goes up to 6 2/3, which is the distance. So the sentence I'm going to write is that it takes 2 hours, your x value or your hours, to run 6 2/3, not miles, kilometers. Now write an equation that models this. Well, we already found out that k is 3 1/3. We did that on the page before. So that means our equation is y equals 3 1/3 x. All right, example 2. This time they give us a chart and a graph of the same information. Okay, it says, using the graph below, let's complete the table and then answer the following questions. So at 1, if you look on the graph, at 1, the y value is 8. 16, the y value is 2. So let's answer some questions about this. Part A, is the relationship proportional? Well, you can look at the chart and find out all the unit rates, or you can look at the graph and see if it's a straight line and it goes through the origin. I think that's a little bit easier. Notice that it is a straight line. It does go through the origin, so that would be yes, and I'm just going to put some reasoning. The graph is a straight line that goes through the origin. So what is the unit rate for cost per pound? Now, I'm going to remind you, unit rate is found by doing y divided by x. Remember, in the chart, our first column is x, our second column is y. Pick any numbers, it doesn't matter. So that would be 8 divided by 1, which is 8. Write an equation for this. Our equation is y equals kx, and now that we know k is 8, our equation would be y equals 8x. All right, next page, part D. It says, what ordered pair represents the unit rate? Yesterday we talked about how the ordered pair that represents the unit rate is 1K. So on the graph, the only point at 1 for x is going to be 1, 8, or we know that the unit rate is 8, so that would be 1, 8. Part E, what does the ordered pair 2, 16 mean? Use the graph. Okay, your x values represent your weight of mushrooms, and your 16 represents the cost. So we'd say 2 pounds of mushrooms will cost $16. Now, if you spend $10 on mushrooms, how many pounds would you get? Well, let's use this equation that we came up with, y equals 8x. $10 is your y value, so let's put that in for y. We're going to solve for x. And when I divide 10 by 8, I get 1.25. That's how many pounds you can get. What would the cost of 30 pounds of mushrooms be? Let's use the equation again. Now pounds is your X value. So 8 times 30 is $240. So this is pretty much a review lesson of all the things we've done. This is a good review heading into the test pretty soon. So go ahead and try all of the homework. They are very similar to questions to what we just did in class. Just keep remembering that your points on the graph are 0, 0, and 1K. You have equations y equals kx. You have constant of proportionality or unit rates as k equals y over x. All right, go ahead and practice those problems in the problem set.